Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you from the WELT studios in Fort Wayne. Off week for IndyCar. We'll preview Gateway coming up a bit later on the episode, but joining us now, a special guest, the president of PRI, Michael Good. Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Caleb. It's good to be here today.
So before we dive into kind of the health of motorsports and everything kind of going on, first off, some recent news with the PRI show coming up this December, but the floor plan and spots for companies to use were just launched a week or two ago. What's the interest level like already for this year's show?
Sure. No, we're excited. All the metrics are showing that the show has got a lot of demand. It's definitely the highest demand we've had this time of year since before COVID. So a lot of momentum right now. We're really excited about it. We take over all of Lucas Oil, all of the convention center, about 1.1 million square feet of show space, and it is filling up very, very quickly.
Michael, when we talk about PRI, performance racing industry, for those that are unfamiliar with the event, how would you describe it?
Sure. So the easiest way to think about PRI, it is the largest motorsports trade show in the United States, arguably in the world. And what we do is we really connect, protect, and advocate for the entire motorsports industry. And the show is a big part of that connection piece of that equation, where we bring all aspects of the motorsports world together. And it's, the show is set up with manufacturers all over the floor. And you have tracks, you have sanctioning bodies, you have drivers. The who's who of racing is prevalent there. The show's been going on since 1988, so we're coming up on our 40th year in just a few years. Very excited about that. And, yeah, it's the place to be in December if you're in the motorsports arena in any way, shape, or form.
Now, I think a lot of people have heard, who are at least into racing, kind of follow the ins and outs, have heard of the trade show. But what is PRI like away from the trade show? What are some of the things that you guys do with the racing industry? Sure.
So, great question. We work very closely with the tracks and with the sanctioning bodies. So we really represent, PRI was born out of the grassroots piece of racing. So if you look at it across a spectrum, on one end of the spectrum, you have go-karting and sim racing as an entry point into the racing world. On the other end of the spectrum, you have IndyCar, where you guys spend a lot of time, as experts on that. Open wheel racing, NASCAR, IMSA. If you look at that entire motorsports universe, PRI is really advocating and trying to protect that motorsports industry and keep it thriving and growing, from legislative work that we do in Washington, D.C., to all of the events that we put on at sanctioning body events, whether it be a specific race of any size or stature, whether it's tractor pulls, sprints, the Rolex 24, Daytona, obviously the Indy 500, and various different open wheel races. So we're working very closely with the sanctioning bodies and the tracks to understand what is it they need, or what are their strategies to grow their parts of the business, and how can we be an evangelist for that? How can we help them grow? We have a large, wide reach. We've been around for a long time, and we work at the end of the day to help those, all those various, whether you're a manufacturer, a race team, a track owner, a track promoter, or you run a sanctioning body. We want to help all of those pieces of the ecosystem thrive. And so we're an evangelist for that. We do a lot on the advocacy front. A lot to it.
Mike, in terms of motorsports, it's constantly changing, constantly evolving priorities for tracks and series and all that. It's just a constant battle to find out what's relevant, what's important, what gets people in the seats, what gets participation. How difficult is it, or are you more just kind of an advocate to make those connections between tracks and people and series and interested parties? Because every time we feel like we have a grasp of where IndyCar is, it changes. And I can't imagine trying to all forms of motorsports across the country.
Sure. So we have a large team that spends a lot of time massaging and navigating all of that data and really understanding, whether it's newsworthy, whether it's something that we can help partner with. I'll give you an example. I was at a safety council in Michigan, I don't know, maybe 60 days ago. And one of the things that came up, this was a room filled with 30 or 40 different track owners and promoters around the state of Michigan and Indiana and Illinois. One of the topics that came up was the lack of EMT availability at the tracks for their events. EMT meaning medical ambulances and paramedics to have on site. And they are having a hard time getting EMTs to engage and be at the events in a financially meaningful way, if that makes sense. And so that was a glaring issue. And we're like, okay, we can help with that as far as letting the industry know, reaching out to the industry and saying, look, if you're in the medical industry as an EMT in any way, shape, or form, and you're into motorsports, we need you. And so it's starting to build the connective tissue of helping them solve that one problem. That was a very minute issue, but it's a big issue, obviously, because if you don't have paramedics at an event, there's a chance the event will not take place. And because that's driver safety is of and spectator safety is of obviously paramount importance. So, that's an example of something at a local grassroots level.
Michael Good joining us. You talked about one of the challenges with motorsports on a very specific level. You look at motorsports as a whole, really since COVID, it kind of feels like there's been a rebirth, and you can tie a lot of things to it. The Drive to Survive series with Netflix, NASCAR kind of regaining their footing after a few tough years, IndyCar getting a change in ownership, and the Indy 500 really doing the best it's done in quite some time. What do you attribute to motorsports, and kind of what is your view on the overall health of motorsports right now?
The one word that comes to mind is thriving. I feel like the motorsports industry is thriving right now, and there is a lot of, whether it be alternative technologies that are coming out that are piquing interest. The sanctions have done a really good job of engaging media. You gave some examples with Drive to Survive and others. And you have the whole social media spectrum where they're really out there putting their products out there for the world to consume. And so a whole new audience is seeing that. And then you have the technologies on the forefront around things like sim racing. You can buy a sim for $500 or $1 million, but the average person might not be able to get their child into go-karting for financial reasons or geographic reasons, but most people could get into the sim arena and give their child or their youth or themselves a way to sit in the seat. And the technologies now are, I don't know if you guys have spent any time in any of these advanced sims, but it's pretty significant as far as the realistic nature of being on a track and feeling the oversteer or the understeer of the car and things like that. And so there's so much going on across so many different avenues. It's really just expanded exponentially the population of people that can consume the motorsports industry. And I think that and the actual product that they're putting out, meaning the races themselves, are being done at a very high caliber now. And then you have, Fox getting involved with IndyCar, and the way that they're broadcasting these races has been spectacular. Not to mention, you have the media companies that are creating live streaming events for maybe a small track in, let's say Terre Haute, since we're here in Indiana. You can watch a race at Terre Haute live stream on your internet. And so I think access, has helped the industry thrive as a entity, if you will.
On the flip side of that, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing motorsports right now? I think there's probably going to be the unknowns of advanced alternative fuel technologies, whether it's hydrogen, EV, hybrid, how that's going to impact it. There's obviously the regulatory piece. We've been dealing, there's roughly 1,260 racetracks across the United States. We've had racetracks run into situations where
They've been there for 50 years, and a developer bought some land close by. They put in a neighborhood, and now that racetrack's fighting a noise ordinance where the people that moved into those homes don't want to deal with the noise that's coming up. And so, that racetrack's been there for 50 years, and it's a part of the ecosystem of that community that it could be in. And so we're there to help advocate for that track and protect that track and give it the ability to keep going and doing what it's doing.
Mike, when you look at your efforts as PRI in terms of motorsports as one, it's interesting because within the sport, everybody's competing against everybody for eyeballs and marquee events, premier events, and manufacturers and all that stuff. And how does that balance work where everybody is under the same umbrella, so to speak, of motorsports, but when you break it down, the competition, even down to the grassroots level, is so big for investments and eyeballs and participants?
That question could go down so many different avenues. PRIs, I say we're agnostic, meaning we cheer on and try to stand up all forms of motorsports, and they all have different challenges, whether you're talking about, the World of Outlaws or High Limits, or, you're talking about the NTPA, the National Tractor Pooling Association, or you get up to something as complex as what John Doonan's doing with IMSA. He's kind of set the bar of how a sanctioning body could be ran. And, so it's really understanding all those different nuances that exist within a given sanction or a given racing circuit, and making sure that we're there to promote the manufacturers that stand up that given vertical of racing, but also understand what are you running into, just like the example I gave earlier around the EMTs in Michigan. And, so everywhere you look, your head is spinning 360 degrees all the time, looking in every direction to understand where are there issues going on that we can help, where are there exciting activities going on that we can help promote and evangelize, and then where are there new technological developments going on that we need to make sure that we're bringing to the forefront to represent the manufacturers that are building them.
Mike,
I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully it gives a little.
No, I know you got to dance around some things, I'm sure. But in terms of tracks, and we had a heyday of new development with racetracks in the late 90s, early 2000s, largely fueled by NASCAR, but not all the way up and all the way down to the local dirt tracks. And we've seen several over the last several years here in Indiana close their doors. When you look at the health of racing venues, and all the way from, Terre Haute, like you mentioned, all the way up to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Daytona, what are the challenges that these tracks are facing that maybe they didn't face or weren't as prevalent 20, 25 years ago?
Well, I mean, one would be the example of just that I gave around, new development taking place. And, you had Irwindale in California, which was a landmark track for decades. And, that was just sold not too long ago in the past 12 months. And, there comes a time where a developer is going to come along and offer a number that somebody can't say no to. And, that's just the reality of the world we live in. We're hoping that is replaced by another track somewhere else down the road. So for every track you lose, you're hopefully getting one back somewhere else. That's not necessarily the case, but, racing is going to go through these ebbs and flows as with any industry. And I think it's just being able to navigate that and understand, how do we fight for these tracks to stay in place if, in fact, the ownership and the constituents that might support that track want it to stay in place, then we're going to help get in the ring and fight for them. So, it's ongoing. It changes every day, and depends on what's going on with the economy. And sometimes the political landscape even impacts it. So a lot of different nuances to it.
Since we're an IndyCar focused podcast, kind of talk about IndyCar and in the tracks, and kind of the issue they have is, outside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they don't own, in I guess Long Beach, which is a street race, they don't own these tracks. So like for a series or a sanctioning body that doesn't own the tracks, what can they kind of do to overcome a hurdle like that?
Well, I've seen firsthand the sanctioning bodies work very, very closely with the track owners to make sure that they're putting first and foremost a safe product in place, but also a marketable product in place that is going to create we live in a time, I'm in my 50s, I can go back to when I was in my youth. You weren't as much focused on having to have the experiential aspect that exists today, whether it's at trade shows, whether it's at a race event. Now there's ride and drives and there's getting in simulators, and they have to kind of reinvent themselves every couple of years and put these experiential aspects in place to make it something that is appealing to the next generation that's coming along. And it's no different on the trade show front. The PRI, somebody had asked me, Mike, how was the 2024 PRI show? I said it was great for 2024. They said, what do you mean by that? I was like, well, if we're doing the same exact show 5 years from now, we're probably dropping the ball somewhere, because we're going to have to continually reinvent and change to have that mass appeal going on for the industry. And I think it's no different for the sanctions and the tracks to work together to make sure that they're putting out a product that creates solid competition, creates a safe environment, but also creates a fan or customer experience that makes somebody say, I've got to go back to that race. I went to the Rolex 24 or the Petit Le Mans down at Atlanta Raceway. That was the first time I'd ever been to Petit Le Mans. I'll go every year. It was such a spectacular event. And, so they've got to, all the tracks got to continue to raise the bar like that.
Kind of coupling off that, piggybacking a little bit, I mentioned back in the late 90s, 2000s, you built an oval somewhere and 50,000 people would show up for a race. And you've mentioned the term race events multiple times over the course of us talking. And that's the direction we've gone, right? It's not as easy as just putting up an oval and 50,000 people are going to show up on a Sunday afternoon and watch. Even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we didn't think NASCAR would be in Chicago and now Mexico and, trying these different events and, what was on dirt at Bristol and stuff like that. So how have you seen that a philosophy change that we can't just put on races? We have to put on race events. And then where do you see the future going? 20 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that we were here in terms of some of these events. And where do you see the trends going to ensure that people are still captivated by racing?
Man, that's a deep, big question right there. Well, I think the build it and they will come mindset doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. It's really, to your point, there really has to be a differentiator, to get into somebody's pocketbook and into their calendar, their social calendar, and say, I'm going to ask these people to give of their time and their money and their resources to come and support my event. It has to be pretty profound because there's so many options. Instead of going to a race, you could probably go to a Cars and Coffee if you're a car person, and in the same town that the race is taking place on the same day. And so there has to be these compelling reasons on wanting to support and wanting to get back behind that and say, okay, open wheel racing is very important to me, so I want to be there to promote it, and I want to tell my friends about it, and I want to bring new people. The best thing, I've lived in Indy for 41 years. One of the most exciting things about the Indy 500 is taking somebody that's never been before, because the shock and awe experience of for them and being able to see that through their eyes, taking it back to when I was 11 years old when I went to my first one, is numbing. And so it's really continually reinventing and creating new things. What the racing world will look like 5-10 years from now, I can't even begin to speculate on that. It would be purely opinion with zero facts to support it. So, to be determined. It'll be interesting to see how the alternative fuel world impacts racing. And, we've seen all the memes and things about EV racing, and, there's no sound. And how can that be appealing? Because you want racing to impact all of your senses. So, it'll be interesting because there is something there. It's just we got to figure that one out.
And it's ever evolving too, even with alternative energies, because all these all electric series, there's no sound, but manufacturers keep looking into Formula E and stuff like that. And then conversely, IndyCar, for example, they have to go hybrid, and they've gone hybrid, and now maybe the direction isn't hybrid, and could they drive? It's so, and I'm sure for you too, Mike, as soon as you feel like you grasp what the future is, it can change on a dime. And I guess that's the beauty of PRI and the event in December. Every December is you put the who's who together, and they start talking, and maybe some of the results they come up with aren't what we thought they would be.
Right. And, I think it's a really exciting time. I was born in the early 70s, and so all the racing that I've ever known has been gas-powered combustion engines, and that's all the world's ever seen. And now to see these alternative fuels coming in, where we're in this like technological revolution in the motorsports arena, or just in the automotive arena, because this carries over to the consumer world as well. It's a really exciting time, and some of them are going to float to the top, and some of them are not going to make the cut. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because I think we're in the infancy of really what is going to lay out the future landscape of motorsports when it comes to alternative fuels.
Michael, you've touched on this a couple of times, mentioning it, and one of these other new things in racing is sim racing, and how that can get people invested and involved at a level that even 5-10 years ago was not really an option for fans to connect with racing.
Oh, 100%. And being able to offer new experiences and being able to create new, the Hoosier 500. It's a 5-year-old, I'll call it a sim race, and that's something that's changing the landscape. It's growing rapidly. That one has Indiana roots. It's owned and operated by Indiana residents, and it's a really cool event in the spirit of us being the racing capital of the world with the Indianapolis 500 and all that Penske has done here, and those before him with the Holman George family. But the Hoosier 500 is a spectacular thing that is reaching all these various different mediums through social channels, and it's exciting.
Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to discuss the racing industry. You touched on it, the PRI Hoosier 500 coming up Sunday, December 14th. We're proud to be a partner. Obviously, you're proud to be a partner as well, and look forward to the sim race and, of course, PRI coming up this December.
You got it. And I love your show. I'm anxious to hear what you guys have to say about the Grand Prix of Madison and some of the future ones we have, Road America, on the IndyCar circuit. And you guys keep doing what you're doing, and I think it's spectacular. So reach out anytime.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Mike.
Really, really good stuff from Michael there. You think about the challenges, and, we're always thinking about kind of macro level stuff, right, with motorsports, and you got to entertain fans, and you have to make sure there's plenty of activities, and that's why road courses seem to do better than ovals for IndyCar, because the schedule's fuller. But something as simple as getting EMTs for your local tracks, very important.
Yes.
But not something you're thinking about in terms of being a challenge. But I think that kind of goes to show you, one, it's an all-encompassing organization, and two, it goes beyond just ticket sales and sanctioning bodies and promoters and that kind of thing.
It's all encompassing, as Mike said, and I think what fascinates me about PRI and the event they put on is motorsport. We rarely look at motorsports as a single entity. We always kind of break it down and say IndyCar versus NASCAR versus Formula One, and then you get down below and even the grassroots tracks that are competing for people to race in them and come to them and keep them in business. But overall, it's all as one, right? And PRI is an excellent event to get everybody under one roof and move in the right direction. And when you break it down, they're competing for different things, but they're all basically the same. And so big things like huge race events for IndyCar or NASCAR, all the way down to how does Terre Haute get more people in the seats for Tuesday night midget racing, right, in the short track. So It's pretty cool, and it just so many different avenues, so many different things that happen down there. And once again, mid-December, right? PRI 2025.
Sim race in mid-December, December 14th, and PRI coming up in December as well, with the date locked in. It says December 11th through 13th. Easy for me to say. So yes, both events coming up in mid-December. But thanks to Michael for joining us, and let's talk about IndyCar now.
Sure,
we kind of did a little bit of discussion on IndyCar, but overall, obviously focusing on motorsports as well, and the sim event coming up as well in December with the PRI Hoosier 500. But I think you want to preview Gateway? Do you want to talk Honda? Which route you want to go first?
Let's talk Honda first.
Okay, let's talk Honda first as well. Rumors continue to percolate.
Ooh, good word.
Yeah, I didn't want to say circulate because that's overused. That Honda is going to join NASCAR in the near future. I mean, it's nothing really new, right? It's just that we had another report that came out this time, Adam Stern of Sports Business Journal, putting more fuel to that fire. And I feel like we've said all there is to say about Honda. I guess the part that's frustrating is they could not have had a better start to this season, and that's still kind of what we're discussing is, will Honda stay or go? Now, Marshall Pruitt did have an update in terms of a Honda decision coming in the next few weeks, so I mean, hopefully we know by mid-Ohio, but I guess that was from last week, so there's really not a whole lot new, just more fuel to the fire, so to speak.
The concern that I have after the latest news, of which came with the announcement that Ram was joining
Truck Series,
mm-hmm. which is a big deal for trucks, is the heavily rumored that Honda is going to jump in, and then their reinvestment into Formula One, right? Honda was in, then they were going to be out, then they're staying in. And if you look at it and you say, is Honda, because they've also said no to WEC, which some people thought that they would take their hypercar, right, to join WEC, which was heavily rumored earlier this year, but as of a couple days ago was not a thing. Honda kind of denied they were going to WEC. Is Honda pivoting to say we're going to focus on the biggest racing series in the world in Formula One and the biggest racing series in North America in NASCAR, and that's going to be it in terms of our big time investment into the major series and leaving IndyCar out of it? That's my worry as we hear more and more about reinvesting in Formula One and their heavy interest in Cup is, hey, we're going to cut our losses everywhere else and we're just going to focus on the two biggest racing series in the world. And that's my concern with Honda. We've talked in the past about our frustrations with Honda, but also understanding the importance of Honda in the series as well. So we're just all kind of in waiting mode, like everybody else, is when does this announcement come? And I posted on our Twitter this week, every time I see a post that mentions IndyCar and Honda in it, I kind of don't want to look at it because I don't know what
you're wincing, right? Yeah,
right. You're like, oh God, here it is. And you hope it's good news when it comes eventually, which could be in a couple weeks. And I mean, they have to make a decision soon. And maybe they've already made a decision, but haven't made it public. They got to make it public soon. But we're just all just kind of waiting. And once we know whether they're in or out, then we can really attack on this is what the series is going to look like in the future, whether that's with or without Honda. So we're like everybody else at this point, maybe reading the tea leaves a little bit too much sometimes because we're desperate for any kind of information. But I feel like we've gotten more information in recent weeks pointing to them not returning as instead of they are returning. But anything can happen, and hopefully Honda sticks around.
My one hope is that the Indy 500 TV numbers being so out of the park strong maybe was a wake-up call in the fact that they won the race. They've won every race this year. They're leading the championship. They're going to win the Manufacturers' Championship, barring an insane setback the rest of the way. So they're checking all the boxes. You have the best Indy 500 TV rating going back to 2008, that maybe IndyCar has clearly turned this corner You have the Fox TV deal that maybe there's the slimmest chance that IndyCar finds a way to lower the expenses, which is what Honda's biggest contention, which is funny because Honda's usually the one raising those prices, right?
They were one of the hybrid, right, which added a lot of money to the budgets.
This has been what Honda has done. They come into a series, they spend a bunch of money, they win, and then they leave, and then the cycle repeats itself. So maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that Honda says, okay, IndyCar is in a better footing in terms of ratings and the future and where they're at. Find a way to lower costs. Well, and maybe it's NASCAR is kind of maybe more of the focus, but they stay in IndyCar with the reduced marketing budget.
And it's been mentioned too about the conflict of interest that IndyCar or Honda sees within IndyCar with Penske. Hopefully the independent rules committee, whatever we're calling them, that will be in place next year, picked by the paddock, and I assume the OEMs as well, will help in that regard too. I think IndyCar, I don't think IndyCar can be blamed for not doing enough if Honda leaves. I know it's easy to blame the series for a lot of things, but I think IndyCar has done what Honda wanted or is doing what Honda would like to see in the future. That's all you can do. But if Honda believes that their budget is better served elsewhere in terms of return on investment with the growth of Formula One in North America and NASCAR being as it is, and you can't really hate on them for that. But hopefully they still find value in IndyCar enough to stay in it. And we're all just kind of waiting on pins and needles to find out whether it's going to be a yes or a no.
For sure. All right, let's talk about Gateway, or the track formerly known as Gateway, as IndyCar heads to St. Louis this weekend. First ever IndyCar Sunday night primetime race, which, I mean, you posted something on Twitter about the ticket map, and again,
that took off, didn't it?
Yeah, the y'all want more ovals but don't attend thing, which, look, Gateway's a fun race. I went several years ago. I understand it being a Sunday night adds an additional challenge. Hopefully the TV numbers make up for that. We shall see. But let's take a look at this event. First off, as always, our 3 key stats, courtesy of Chad 200. Joseph Newgarden, 5 wins and 9 starts, 2 poles, 599 laps led. 2.7 average starting position, Will Power, 1 win, 4 poles, 450 laps led a lap in all 9 of his starts. And to finish off the Penske trifecta, Scott McLaughlin has finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in his 4 starts. Team Penske turnaround, average finishing positions this year, 13.7, 12.3, and 9.3. Obviously, Newgarden, McLaughlin, Power in that order, 1st through 3rd. They better hope it's a turnaround weekend, because this feels like the biggest opportunity for them.
Short tracks are Penske's strength, if anything, right?
Yes.
And so you look at it. I mean, McLaughlin's been on pole the last 2 years. The last 4 years, a Penske driver has been on pole. Will Power, 2021, 2022. Joseph Newgarden, as you mentioned, has won 4 of the last 5 races. Nobody outside of Newgarden and Dixon has won this race since 2019. That year, Joseph Newgarden was on pole. The year before, Will Power won. And Scott Dixon was on pole. You're seeing a theme here. Penske's and Dixon, basically. So I agree with you in the sense that if Penske is to get on track, this is where they start doing it, where their bread and butter, their strength over the last several years, whether it's Iowa, whether it's Gateway, short tracks. And you expect them to come off the hauler fast. And what's so impressive about Team Penske at tracks like Gateway and Iowa is their ability to stick the cars low in the corners and just right near the white line and just really able to spin that car around the track very fast, very locked in, very down on the apron or on the track, close to the apron, and just be really impressive. And it doesn't take very long to see if a car is going to be good or not good at a short track. All you'll need is practice one. And we expect Penske to rebound, but we didn't also expect to be this deep into a season without a Penske win.
Certainly not. Taking a look at the weekend schedule, we'll make our picks here shortly. And I think the weekend schedule is notable. So we're recording this on Thursday morning, June 12th here in the U.S. And you look at the schedule. Saturday, you have practice one, all times Eastern, 11:30 on FS1, IndyCar Radio, IndyCar Live, all the usual outlets. Qualifying 3 o'clock in the afternoon on FS1, and then final practice at 5:30 Eastern. Remember, this is a Central Time Zone race. Final practice on FS2. That includes the Highline practice and final practice. All those times, we're talking daytime. The race itself, TV coverage starts at 8 Eastern on Fox on Sunday night. Obviously, that's 7 Eastern. You look at the green flag time, which is set for 7:20 Central, 8:20 Eastern. So it's still going to be light out, and quite honestly, could still be light out for the duration of this race. But those are much different track conditions for practice and qualifying than you're going to have for the race itself. And I think that's a huge factor in this event, that whatever you see in practice and qualifying, is it going to have any bearing on track conditions where it's going to be getting darker and you're looking at, track temperature is going to be dropping throughout the race, which means setups are going to be vastly different. Like, this is such a wild card, having this event Sunday night when you don't have any really relevant practice or qualifying time.
And that's the challenge, or that's the issue of moving the start time of this race, is the schedule is made for Saturday. It's not just IndyCar that's racing this weekend at Gateway. So you can't really mess with the track time, right? Silver Crown is Saturday night.
I believe so.
And so you can't just boot Silver Crown and slide in a practice in there. That's just not how it works. So that's going to be the challenge all weekend through practice is, okay, my car may be good now, but we aren't practicing when this race is going to be run on Sunday evening, Sunday night. So what's good in the daytime may not be good in the nighttime or even the twilight. So that's going to be the challenge for everybody. But I mean, we're going to make our picks here in a second, but you look at, we talked about Team Penske in general, Joseph Newgarden in particular. I mean, he's got to win this weekend, right? I mean, 4 out of 5 wins. His season has been terrible by Joseph Newgarden's standards. No wins, of course, just a single podium. I mean, he's got to bounce back this week and win this race.
This feels like the prime opportunity for him to get a season on track. But as we talked about last week, with all the changes at Team Penske on the personnel side, it just makes it that much tougher to get,
I mean, any continuity, really.
Yeah,
building
that's
continuity.
The word I'm looking for, continuity.
Is it's a struggle. And we're in a process here where every race week we're having a story on, okay, this is the leadership for Team Penske this week, and could be different at Road America and Mid Ohio. I mean, that's what the challenge is. But really elite race car drivers, of which Joseph Newgarden is, put all that behind them and go out and execute. And that's something he has not been able to do this season.
Yeah, outside the first race.
Correct. And so for a guy that the championship is out of the question, obviously, for pretty much everybody anyway,
Yeah.
but especially him, it's down to putting good performances and winning races for Joseph Newgarden at this point of the season. And for a guy that has been as good as anybody in his career at Gateway, you feel like if he doesn't have it here, is he going to have it anywhere in 2025?
And for him, we've seen him have late season surges, like in the second half of a season, several times where he's, not really far out of the picture on the points side, but he makes the run and wins a handful of races to close the season and ends up finishing, higher up in the standings.
Right.
So he's still possible of doing that. And obviously between Gateway and Road America, which are in back-to-back weeks, those are two great Team Penske tracks. So with that said, who's your pick to win?
Do you go Joseph Newgarden just because of his history here? I'm not going to. I'm going to go Scott McLaughlin to win this race.
I am going to stick with the theme of this season.
You're going to take Alex Palou?
Yes.
One of us have to take Alex Palou in any race, right? At this point,
I think for whatever reason, this has been kind of one of the weirder seasons I can ever recall in terms of just outright dominance by a driver. And I don't think he would have won Detroit, but I think he would have been on the podium, right?
Yeah.
If he wasn't taken out. So
definitely top 5.
Why not? I'll take him. Why not?
I think this is a very interesting weekend because it signifies the second half of the season. I know we're not officially at the second half of the season, but you start, the first couple races are getting your feet under you, new season, and then it's all about either prepping for Indy or even post-Indy with Detroit, because it was still the week after. Now you have a week off for the first time in 5 weeks. And first week off since Long Beach, right? Effectively after Long Beach. And so you're post-Indy, so you have teams and drivers able to properly digest that because you have to turn around quickly and go to Detroit. You get a week off, and now you're finally Indy's in the rear view. We're in the meat of the schedule. This is where we really need to start performing, or this is really the part of the season where we need to shine. Every single driver, every single team is approaching Gateway with the same mentality of, now we're in the heart of the season. No Indy distractions or, we're just going to ease into the season. Let's get a couple races on our belt, figure things out. This is the meat of the season now. And who is really going to start shining, both teams and drivers. And so it's a very important race with Gateway, not to mention the fact that it's the first real oval outside. It is the first real oval outside of Indianapolis.
All right, Gateway coming up this weekend. Looking forward to it. Sunday night on Fox.
What's a reasonable, if you look at Sunday night on Fox, and we were looking at it last night, the lead in is what?
Gold
Soccer?
Cup. Yeah, U.S. Gold Cup soccer. It's U.S. men's national team against Trinidad and Tobago. So
maybe the U.S. Team USA can get a shot on goal.
They better win. They've
could.
Been a disaster if you follow soccer. They've been a disaster.
Even if you don't follow soccer, you saw them lose. You heard them
getting
lose about
destroyed
4-0 by Switzerland.
Without
Switzerland. A shot on goal. But the lead in is what it is. But it's primetime Sunday night. When we start getting hints of the TV rating Monday, Tuesday, what do you think? Do you still say anything over 1 million is good? Do you look at, it should get 1.5?
I think to me, you got to get over 1 million. That's a lock.
Sunday primetime, you have to get 1 million.
You have to get over 1 million. I think you're happy with 1.2 or above.
I think
you're thrilled if you're approaching St. Pete or better numbers.
Right, yeah, which is what, 1.4?
Yeah.
Something. I agree. I think this it should get at least a 1.2. Should, but we'll see. Don't be under 1 million.
Yeah,
please.
That's the number one thing.
And this is the thing. It's so unpredictable with IndyCar ratings. You start so strong. You're like, okay, here we go. And then we didn't see another race over 1 million until Indy. And Indy was huge. And then we're like, well, we're going to see a drop off. We'll be lucky to get 1 million at Detroit. And the rating at Detroit was pretty solid. So you never know. But you hope a Sunday primetime race can get a healthy number for IndyCar and Fox.
If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us on social media, IndyCar Podcast, the handle on Twitter/X, and on Instagram. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. You can email us your questions, comments, or rants, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier and others for their support. And as always, download and listen on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Mailbag time, Justin, and unfortunately we had way too many replies on your ticket sales tweet.
Yes,
Gateway.
Unfortunately, it was good to for everybody's feedback. It's confusing when you look at the track map for Gateway, because if a section is closed, it's blacked out. But that could mean it's sold out, or it could mean it's closed.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
It's hard to know. So if I would say, attendance wise, I mean, 20,000 would be phenomenal, I feel.
Yeah, with the change. Here's the thing. Gateway, turn one, those stands usually are pretty full. It's usually full in the section at the start-finish line, as
right.
are most tracks.
Yeah.
So if you can get that main grandstand,
Mostly full. I mean, they're not going to open the grandstand in turn two.
No.
It's not happening.
That's a NASCAR only thing. But yeah, I think I'm hopeful the crowd is good. I don't know if this is a sustainable thing, having it on Sunday night. I mean, ideally it's a Saturday night race, because a lot of your crowd is coming from the Indianapolis area for this event.
Right.
And it's nice to have it where, a Saturday night race or Sunday afternoon race where, you make a weekend of it kind of thing.
Plenty of time to drive home night of or after and be in position to make work on Monday morning. We are in agreement that Indy cars and some of Gateway too, their approach to just feel like they can slot Gateway in wherever and whenever they want and still get a crowd is concerning.
Yeah, this is an event that was run in August for a long time, and then they flip-flopped the NASCAR race and IndyCar essentially. NASCAR is running early June before, and so they've made changes for that, and I hope it works, and I hope it can be sustainable, because you have a great sponsor. It's a great market for IndyCar. You just hope you can find some continuity moving forward with whatever you decide.
And that's the hope. It's been obvious since Gateway got NASCAR, or Cup in particular, that IndyCar is secondary. And as it should, because hosting a Cup race profits you, $15, $20 million before you even sell a single ticket due to the TV deal. It makes sense that that's the most important race on Gateway's schedule. But you hope that there's room for IndyCar at Gateway long term. But I do think date equity and time equity is very, very important. And I think IndyCar was haphazard at the beginning of the Gateway relationship, and can still are, in terms of, this race draws, so we can move it wherever we want. I mean, remember the talk was moving this race to the season finale?
Yeah.
Early on in the Gateway relationship, where it was like, well, look, it's getting 40,000 people. We should move it to the finale. But like, you can't do that. And that was before Cup came on board at Gateway. So you're just concerned about is the importance of a decent TV rating and not going against NASCAR, which I understand, to the detriment of the track in terms of being able to maximize your attendance. And we know it's being affected at Gateway, because we all know people that aren't going to this race from the Indy area or wherever, because they can't get back in time for a Monday morning, or they're going to get back and have 2 hours of sleep before Monday morning work. So hopefully more people around the St. Louis metro area show out and come out. Hopefully the added incentive of a night race, albeit Sunday night, helps. But my concern is what helps the TV rating hurts the event. That's my concern.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope this doesn't hamstring it moving forward.
And that's to say nothing of what the product is on track, which we haven't even talked about. That's always the concern, right? It's the first short track. Well, no, because we've had the hybrid last year.
Gateway was solid last year.
Yeah. Did it have the hybrid?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was later in the season, right? It was after Iowa. That was the concern last year is, oh my gosh, this is going to be Iowa 2.0. And it wasn't. So at least we've had a race with the hybrid here at Gateway. So it wasn't a question like it was at Indianapolis. So that helps. It's always a concern about the racing, but it was pretty solid last year. So hopefully it delivers again this year.
All right. Elsewhere on the mailbag, Cusick Motorsports kind of posted a wrap-up and what they're looking to do. In fact, they're interested in the series formerly known as Indy Lights and having a team there. IndyCar Deep Throat told me a rumor that they're even interested in maybe running some IndyCar races, late this season. But the quote from Don Cusick in the story, I think the plan was to go full-time or major part-time in 2027 with the new IndyCar chassis. But now that chassis change is not going to happen until 2028, if then. Just kind of keeps getting kicked down the road. What? Right?
Right. That was like a throwaway quote towards the end of the story. And this was from Cusick Motorsports. This was not a news outlet that put this story together, but we saw it and retweeted it. And we were like, huh? Because the expectation is this car is going to be, the chassis and new engine is going to be, 2027?
Yeah.
But now Don Cusick is saying, no, it's not. And there was nobody from IndyCar who refuted the claim and said, no, that's not right, which is more concerning. Now,
Doug Bowles, in an interview on Black Book Motorsport, of course, the very end of the Q&A, said, talking about something else, and then said, the other thing, little longer term, is where we are going to be on our engine as well as our new car and getting that all sorted out and figuring out how that's going to look. Hopefully we get that solved here in the next 90 days. No definitive year on that.
But Cusick, maybe he's misinformed, but he's also a guy that is in the know.
Yes.
So maybe he's talking on something that IndyCar is yet to reveal, that they're pushing this back a year.
It's a telling quote. That's all we'll say.
It's a telling quote, and even more telling that it was not shut down or IndyCar didn't come out and say, that's not right. The fact that they didn't is more telling to me.
A couple of replies. Aaron J. Richmond said the incompetence is truly stunning. Obviously talking about IndyCar. Tyler_Allen said, oh, for the love of God. Hunter's Way 67 said, I don't think I can take 3 more years of this car. I agree. Paul Dudd 1964 said, in the 80s and 90s, smaller companies like March, Lola, Reynard, and Penske came out with new cars, if not every year, then every couple of years. So now a much bigger company like Delora is taking 8 to 9 years between new cars. And then Brandon Wright 77 said, Delora is quite capable of making a new car anytime, but they need IndyCar to order a new car first. And so far that has not happened. This is all on IndyCar. Yeah. Yes. Correct. So it's frustrating that this is where we're at on that topic.
Well, and is IndyCar in a position where they're also waiting for Honda's answer? And could that dictate things?
I'm sure that's part of
I think
delay.
so too. Like if Honda's out, then the hybrid is probably out. So that would impact things with the engine formula and then thus the car. Is Honda holding everybody hostage at this point, including IndyCar? I don't know. And hopefully we get some clarity in the coming weeks, because that was a very interesting quote from Don Cusick, and the silence from the leadership of IndyCar regarding that quote was also very telling.
Elsewhere on the mailbag, it was confirmed that the Canadian Grand Prix will be the same day as the 110th Indy 500 next year on May 24th. Montreal follows Miami on the calendar. The F1 reasoning is laughable. They say they're doing it for sustainability efforts with Montreal following Miami. The problem is there's like 2 weeks between the races.
Yeah, nobody's staying.
So no one's staying. And also F1's like, well, and Adam Stern is just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. But he had several posts on this. One talking about, well, Montreal is going to be the 3rd Sunday in May. Like, that's how F1 does their schedule. Well, the Indy 500 has been around forever.
Correct.
And then F1 officials saying, oh, this is not a shot at Indy 500, where like this will not be a conflict except once every 5 years, right, based on how the calendar falls. It's all really stupid, and F1 is going to pay the price, I'm sure.
You would hope, but
this feels like them taking a shot and seeing how much they can really push the envelope.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think it will work. Now, IndyCar needs to be smart and move up the start time of the Indy 500 a little bit to make sure, because...
Of which it started earlier before, right?
Yeah.
A little after noon.
Yeah, I mean, it started at 11 a.m. for a long time.
Correct.
Now, I mean, I'm not saying you need to do that, but maybe start it closer to 12:15 instead of 12:45. And that's some of the replies on here. Poet Shevchenko says kind of the same thing. If IndyCar moves the start of about half an hour, I think it will be very little, if any, impact on TV ratings. Dennis said there's probably at least a few thousand people who attended both races, now have to pick and choose. That 52 car said doesn't hurt my feelings. I'll be watching the 500. Lynn_IndyCar said F1 is looking to knock out the IndyCar series. This race is bigger than F1. It is the race that started racing, period. I mean, it didn't start racing, but it's the one that catapulted, I would say, into kind of where we're at. Historic Hot Lap said F1 thinks their Netflix traction will continue through all their changes, but eventually it's going to fizzle out. IndyCar has a good trend going, and if it continues through the season, next year's potential is exciting. One quick thought on F1. As soon as F1 gets their new TV deal, which they're having a hard time getting a new TV deal in the U.S., I guarantee it will include commercial breaks during the races, and that will wipe away all the momentum. I think that is a huge factor. Fans are used to watching races. These new fans for F1 are used to commercial-free races. That's not going to be sustainable moving forward. And I mean,
unless it's on a stream, which will probably kill your view.
Well, yeah. I mean, people will be like, well, I just do F1 TV, which, I mean, people will, but...
True. The problem is we keep waiting for F1 to begin declining in the United States, and it's not.
It hasn't. I think
the F1 movie will have a big impact. I think Cadillac coming in is going to have a big impact, and F1 is betting on, hey, let's just go up against the Indianapolis 500 and see what happens. And if they still draw a healthy number for that race, they're going to be consistent in racing that weekend. So I agree with you in the sense that this is just a let's see what happens type thing with Formula One, but I don't see Formula One going anywhere anytime soon in the United States. I think it's...
I do once the new TV deal... Again, it's as simple as you have ads during races. It will turn off a lot of these newer fans.
I don't know. I don't know, because we've constantly moved the goalposts with Formula One, and once this happens, then that's going to fall off, and it continues to grow. And two big things that are going to impact the growth in North America, and particularly the United States, is the F1 movie coming up later this month, and
Cadillac.
The addition of Cadillac. Now, I'm not saying they're going to draw comparable Indy 500 numbers for that race, but I think the viewership of the Formula One continues to rise, and FIA and Formula One just want to see, let's just see what this number will be. And then if it comes out where they get less than $1 million for that race, awesome. Then they won't mess with it again. But if they get $2 million to watch, I don't think this is a one and done thing.
Sam 271994 says IndyCar needs to stand its ground, not even consider moving the start time or anything. Cannot bend to F1. I disagree. But set yourself up for success.
You do the best you possibly can to set up for the best number.
Brady BC3 said if they are smart, they race from 4 to 6 between the races. I don't think everyone's going to wait that long, but we shall see.
They're going to start the race locally about what, 12:30, 1 o'clock?
Yeah, IndyCar is going to do that. And then for Montreal, it'll probably be sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock. That's kind of been the standard start time that they usually go with. A couple other tweets. Kojo617 said, saw this good news today. I kid, and it's a meme. It's the Drake kind of no and then yes, if you know the meme I'm talking about. And it's the 2026 Canadian GP and Indy 500 will be on at the same time. Danica will be in Montreal, not Indy. We shall see on those contracts.
I'm not a Danica hater, but I do think with each successive year that Danica is removed from IndyCar racing, the less valuable she is for insight. That said, she has no insight on Formula One in terms of being in the cockpit, and that's really kind of what her value has been advertised as on the Indy 500 broadcast is, she was a racer in IndyCar, but she's further and further removed from that with each successive year. For sure. And that is the challenge, I think, for any commentator for IndyCar. Whether it's Danica or anybody. I mean, I would say the same thing if somebody was put in that position so far removed from the seat. and not involved with the series. It's different, say, Dario Franchitti, who's still invested in the series, right, and is a real big part of it. Danica's not, outside of, talking about what am I trying to say? Broadcasting. Or
Broadcasting,
yes.
yeah.
Sheesh.
A couple other tweets about Shevchenko. This is on Honda. I think the thing they are most sorry about is what is in the car, but rather what is not in it. If you remember, IndyCar was supposed to switch to more powerful 2.4-liter engines. Honda built theirs, had it ready to go, but Chevy/Ilmor couldn't get theirs to work, so IndyCar reverted to the existing 2.2-liter engines. Fortunately for Honda, they're able to somewhat salvage the engine by running it in their Acura LMDH. A lot of investment wasted. That's an excellent point that I think we forget about.
Yeah.
So
I agree. They haven't really mentioned it, but it's definitely back of mind.
Yeah. And Lynn_IndyCar found this. A Joseph Newgarden Parkside IndyCar card sold for $1,500.
Did Joseph Newgarden buy it? He wanted to buy his own card?
I don't know. I mean, it's obviously a 2 of 2 card, but that's pretty crazy.
Still looking for Parkside cards at our local Targets here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Boy, it would be nice to be able to pick up a couple packs. We wait. Every time my wife goes to Target, I make sure she checks. Maybe she just doesn't even know what to look for, but I stopped in, as I mentioned last week, and nothing. And you've looked when you've been at Target.
Yeah.
We're less than 2 hours away from the epicenter of IndyCar racing, and these were supposed to be on sale at Target, and they ain't, at least here in Fort Wayne. It's annoying.
And then one other tweet from NK Hardin was the new chassis originally supposed to come out. It's been delayed so many times, I know I can't keep up. Feels like it's supposed to be 2020. I think so, yeah. Right? I mean, that was supposed to be a lot of new stuff.
Yeah,
hybrid,
a lot of new stuff.
Car, engine.
Here we are in 2025, still asking for the same things. And still years away from those things.
Yes. All right, let's get to news and notes for this week. Good news on the track front. Another article on Mexico City. Not really a huge update. This from Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com. Conversations continue. The series, Racer Understands the Series started speaking of a visit to Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City as something it expects to happen for 2026. Now, Pruitt did go into dates. Return to thermal has not been confirmed in terms of what the date could be. End of March or because he highlights you have IndyCar Arlington in mid-March, then you have the 12 Hours of Sebring the week after. The IndyCar teams participate in that, so it could be late March. Obviously, it could be before Long Beach as well, but looking at the schedule, either way, even without thermal, they do a better job in terms of gaps. I mean, you'll need a gap before Mexico City and after Mexico City of at least a week.
Right.
So this is, again, the more you read about stuff like this, the positive momentum, the better. And that's, I think, where we're at.
Definitely, especially since we've been burned so often before on races that we're getting closer and closer, and then you don't hear anything for a while, and then they're just peter out and don't happen. I think this story is good to reinforce that, hey, IndyCar's getting closer and closer, and hopefully, by into July, we have some sort of announcement for a Mexico City race for next year.
Elsewhere, Adam Stern posting that Kit Kat's new F1 sponsorship focus on Latin America, although the fan activation zone in the Mexico Grand Prix and at a Sao Paulo airport in October, co-branded merch, an appearance from Pato Award, and an on-package retail sweepstakes. So the Pato Mall visit will return again.
Will return. So, for so long, Kit Kat was just, one flavor. Now, every time I look, there's a different flavor of Kit Kat.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Can you do the white chocolate Kit Kat? Have you ever done that?
I don't think I've ever tried it.
Have you tried anything other than the normal Kit Kat?
I don't think I love the normal Kit Kat.
Right. I think I had one yesterday, actually. I've done the white chocolate. I like white chocolate, but there's crazy flavors out there now. But hey, if you like Kit Kat, they're making a big investment in motorsports.
Couple of good sponsorship news for IndyCar. First off, a full season, rest of the season sponsorship for Louis Foster. Drop Lights HQ will be the primary sponsor for the remainder of the season. Now, I read the article and I couldn't tell you what they do. I know they also work with Catherine Legg. Some people pointed out. So, but that's good news there.
I just picture a drop light like what you have when you're working on.
No, this is like they partner with the entertainment industry.
So
and
it's not
else.
an actual drop light like that you hang from your hood when you're working on your engine. Okay.
Meyer Shank Racing have announced that Spectrum will sponsor a few more races for Marcus Armstrong.
That's a big deal.
Yes, it definitely is. They obviously sponsored him for the 500, but they will be on board for Gateway this weekend. Also, Road America, Mid-Ohio, and Portland.
And that's what, the biggest cable network in the Northeast? Right?
I think so. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
You have Valbruna, an Italian company from Prima's hometown of Vicenza, Italy, is now an official sponsor for the remainder of the IndyCar season. They are on the cars, I believe, at Detroit and Indy. So
cool.
Valbruna, I definitely heard of them. Some ticket news. Tickets are on sale now for the 2025 Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto, July 18th through 20th. HondaIndy.com/tickets. Elsewhere on track news, this is going to blow your mind. Road America beat out the Green Bay Packers to become the top specialty license plate in Wisconsin.
Isn't that insane?
That's insane.
It's
awesome, but it's also insane.
Awesome and insane that the Green Bay Packers are synonymous with Wisconsin.
Yes.
In the sporting scene. And for Road America to surpass the Packers, huge.
Unbelievable. One other note on Louis Foster, he'll be on the mic as the guest analyst for the Indy Lights race coming up on Sunday. For coverage 4:30 Eastern on FS1, so you can see him there. Couple other announcements. McLaren, and this is a good find by Adam Stern from the race.com article, that Zach Brown has decided his IndyCar team needed a whistleblowing hotline for his employees to flag when they've been asked to do something that, quote, isn't right.
For his own employees. It's not like telling on other teams.
Yeah. This is more protecting from the IndyCar crackdown, essentially, on rules. But I thought that was a fascinating thing.
You would hope you're not getting a lot of calls on that line.
No.
But who knows? But really interesting and transparent, too, as well, which Zach Brown always is with his candor and what he thinks IndyCar needs to do and what his team needs to do. But really interesting. You just hope, for McLaren's sake, that's not a phone that's ringing off the hook all the time.
Meyer Shank Racing, one other note on them, they're holding an open house. Now, we're recording this again on Thursday, June 12th. This event is Friday, June 13th from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time in Pataskala, Ohio at their shop. So an open house for them. So if you're listening in time and can check it out, obviously.
You're not going to see any drivers or anything there, though.
I don't think so. They're all at St. Louis and Lamar, right?
Right, yeah. So I would imagine a pretty empty shop. But hey, if you want to stop in, go ahead.
And speaking of drivers, Cadillac F1 reportedly trying to secure Sergio Perez as a driver for 2026. Not really surprised there. That from Joe Saward, who has his green notebook. Always some interesting F1 nuggets in there.
Yeah.
And J.R. Hildebrand, former IndyCar driver, will be competing at Pikes Peak in a 1999 Pontiac Grand Prix NASCAR.
Ooh.
So he will be part of the Pikes Peak hill climb.
Is that this weekend? The hill climb?
I did not see a date on this.
I think it's coming up soon. I don't know if it's this weekend or
June 22nd.
So not this weekend, next weekend.
Yeah, it is quite soon.
I have I've went down Pikes Peak.
Yeah, on your
a
bike,
bicycle.
Right?
One of the most terrifying
been
things
up
I've ever
it
done.
in a car.
So you drove up?
Well, I didn't drive, but yes, I was like a kid.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't really remember it, to be honest.
They also have like the cable tram thing you can take up
Yes.
too. But yeah, we've both been to Pikes Peak and down Pikes Peak, and neither one of us drove in a NASCAR.
I'm sure that would be pretty wild. And let's see, one other thing. Congrats to Graham and Courtney Rahal as they're expecting their third child this fall.
Very nice. They have, what, 2 girls?
Yes. So
we'll see if it's
we'll see.
3 for 3 for girls or the family gets a boy.
And with that, anything new, anything that we missed?
I don't think so.
Actually, I found something that we missed.
Oh, yes.
Literally just announced that tickets for Music City on sale.
All right.
I think that was last week, but officially they are on sale.
I mean, a lot of the week's hubbub was about the F1 schedule. I just, in the end,
control what you can control.
Control what you can control. We know what F1's trying to do. It's a power move to see exactly what they could get going up against the Indianapolis 500. Do I feel like it seriously impacts the 500? No, I really don't. Maybe slightly the TV rating, but I just don't know very many people that will watch the Canada Grand Prix over the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, I think that's kind of
and
the
I
final
think Formula
word.
One's going to find that out.
Yes. All right. No tweets of the week. I'm
No?
sure we'll have some fireworks after a race weekend.
Yeah, probably.
So let's get to our random split air driver of the week.
Yeah, let's go to the fertile ground that always is late champ car and the fertile ground that is Dale Coyne, and go with Andreas Wirth.
Hey, I've heard of him.
German national that raced 2 races for Coyne in 2006, raced at Surfers Paradise and Mexico City, the final 2 races of the 2006 season. He began his career in karting in Germany. He finished second in Formula Ford in Germany and then went into BMW racing, then came over to the United States, did Formula BMW in 2004, did Atlantics in 2005 and 2006, won 3 times in Atlantics, Denver, Long Beach, and Houston. Finished 3rd in the championship in 06. Then got the call up to the big leagues that year for Coyne as a late season replacement. And again, finished 9th at Surfers, 15th at Mexico City. And that was it. He did not do any racing in 2007, did Atlantics early season in 2008, and then got into GT racing and Le Mans. Actually raced for SMP Racing at Le Mans in 2016. Michael Aloshin's team, SMP Racing. And did WeatherTech Sports Car, did the Daytona race in 2016 in the Delta Wing DWC. If you remember the Delta Wing, the radical proposal.
Yes.
So raced that at Daytona in 2016. And that's it for Andreas Wirth. He did he drove with Stefano Coletti in the Le Mans racing in 2016. And that's it. Just 2 races in Champ Car that season, 2006. And those were the only 2 appearances in Champ Car for him. A native of Heidelberg, West Germany. Still just 40 years old. Mr. Andreas Wirth, this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
All right. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. We'll be back next week to recap the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 from the racetrack formerly known as Gateway. Thanks for joining us on New Track Record Podcast.